Yo guys, so today we're gonna be watching Yeah, No Wonder It Won the Oscar. It's about Shrek and it's by ScreenPuff. So yeah, let's check this out.
And the Oscar goes to Shrek.
As the underdog, this was the ultimate FU moment and defeat over Disney. But more than that, Shrek took the traditional animation playbook,
I didn't want to do what Disney did.
wiped their ass with it, and completely rewrote the rules.
Shrek's gotta be one of the best movies ever made.
Wanted to find our own path.
This is Jeffrey Katzenberg, Shrek's producer, whose bitterness for Disney would become a crucial element behind what made the film so special. Before founding DreamWorks, he worked for Disney.
So is it true to say that when you arrived at Disney, you feel like the original heart and soul?
People forget how shit the technology was back then, bro. Like, now they didn't have like all the stuff we have now, like iPads and all these things you can easily do graphic design on. Like, that's some old school equipment.
All of Disney being its animation was nowhere near as successful as it had been in the past.
In 1984, 85, in that period of time was probably the lowest point, which is why new management was brought in. I think the entire Disney brand had lost any real value. I sat down with Eisner and he said, "You see that building over there? That's where they make the animated movies." I said, "Oh, that's nice." He said, "And that's your problem."
Yeah.
I am telling you, hand on the Bible, it is exactly my introduction to animation. I didn't know a thing about it. But then we did Little Mermaid, then Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. In the summer of 1994,
Lion King is goated though. That's one thing Disney's got over everybody.
the number one movie in the world was The Lion King. The number one show on Broadway was Beauty and the Beast. So pretty much anything that you want to think of in the world of art or creative or storytelling, the Walt Disney Studio at that moment in time literally was the top in every single one of those things.
After bringing the studio unfathomable amounts of money and success, Katzenberg deserved a promotion, which was obvious to everyone, except for one man.
Michael Eisner, chairman of the Walt Disney Company, refused to promote Katzenberg to the #2 corporate job, left vacant by the death of President Frank Wells in April.
Frank had made a deal with Jeffrey that he never told me about. I had made a deal, and I was stubborn, and I said, "Jeffrey, you have to live with this deal."
You left Disney.
Well, that's a very kind way.
Yeah,
Listen, I was fired, got the boot. I'm out of a job, being dragged through the gutters of Hollywood Boulevard. It was, just the worst things being written and said, and, I had this lawsuit. It was just super nasty and really, really, ugly.
8 days later, I announced DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen.
And the inspiration for Shrek would come in that same year.
A lady who worked in our live-action movie company came into my office and she brought this book in. And she said, "I have no idea what you look for in an animated movie, but I've been reading this book to my children every night." And it was sitting there on my desk and there was that illustration on.
I've actually always wondered how the fuck did they come up with the idea of Shrek? I mean, it's like an ogre. This makes no sense.
On it, a little hand-drawn illustration, it's Shrek. And I opened that book and read that story and, it all was there. Donkey, the whole.
But there was one problem. The story was just too crude.
His mother was ugly, and his father was ugly. But Shrek was uglier than the two of them put together. Wherever Shrek went, every living creature fled. How it tickled him to be so repulsive.
Repulsive, ugly, were not part of Disney's clean-cut marketable formula. But for
Damn, I didn't know it was a book.
Katzenberg, that wasn't exactly a bad thing.
When we started DreamWorks, I said, I don't want to make Disney movies because that's their heritage. And I want us to create our own. I want us to find a different course.
We began what I consider the R&D years of DreamWorks, in which we were trying to find ourselves. So we started out by making an incredibly dramatic movie, The Prince of Egypt. Something
That's another goated movie. You guys need to watch that shit.
Disney would never do. Then we made very sophisticated New York City comedy, Ants, with Woody Allen. Once again, a very different kind of movie. And then we made a
Man, another one. This is like, I think it's got Rocky Balboa in it.
satirical movie, Chicken Run, with Aardman. We're trying to find our path. Nowhere on this planet would anybody ever confuse these with a Disney film. Then the big green ogre shows up. That is the defining moment. It's the moment when we found who we are, found our North Star, we found our mission statement.
I've heard this phrase, it's appealing to the adult in the child.
Well, and I say this with a wink and a nod to Walt Disney. We make movies for adult and the adult that exists in the child.
Don't you want your 8-bit beer? What are you bitching about?
At that time, and I want to say 1994, a group of us who worked at DreamWorks were told about this book about an ogre, and they wanted to make a CG movie.
Shrek came out in '01. So, wait, 1994? 7 years?
The instruction that we got was that DreamWorks was imagining a dark and edgy movie. It was also going to be a low-budget movie. So really, we were feeling our way in the dark.
DreamWorks' execs didn't have a ton of faith in the project and said,
"We'd like to see a test and see if you guys even understand 3D at all."
Give me your little fat boy. Fight me.
That's crazy.
The concept of the test was that Shrek was going to walk down a dark medieval alley and be confronted by a mugger whom he'd be able to get rid of right like that, and we'd just get some insight into the kind of character Shrek was. And we understood Chris Farley was going to be the voice of Shrek, so Shrek was going to be probably a broader comical character than he ended up being. He was going to be a little bit like a bull in a china shop, and I think the test reflects that.
But DreamWorks executives were not impressed.
The powers that be were concerned that this was getting a little too dark and edgy. They were kind of going, my God, can people really watch a character like that for 90 minutes? I think the concerns were, no, we've got to get a broader audience.
So they had to pivot to a softer, more family-friendly tone, redesigning everything from scratch. On top of that, actor Chris Farley, who had recorded almost all his dialogue for the film, passed away unexpectedly in '97, and everything he recorded.
Wow, I didn't know that. That just shows you how much like something can change. I wonder if like he stayed alive, if he would actually have been the voice for the actual Shrek movie now.
Recorded would have to be replaced.
Simple. Fartwad gets his princess, I get what I want.
Which is? Now come on, what do you want?
I don't have time to set it to music.
Oh, this is another one of those onion things.
No, this is one of those drop it and leave me alone things.
Having to recast Shrek ended up being one of the most advantageous turn of events for the film.
I went to the premiere of Saving Private Ryan. I was in the lobby, and Jeffrey Katzenberg comes up. He said, would you ever do an animated movie? I said, sure. He goes, well, we have an animated movie. It's called Shrek. And I said, well, that's the worst title I've ever heard in my life. He said, just come down and see it. I saw it, and what I liked was that it had turned fairy tales on its head. And I thought that was really, really smart.
The first voice I did for Shrek was actually Canadian.
That's the place. Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
And it was like, I live in a swamp, eh? And like, I'm an ogre, right?
I assumed that ogres were working people in that world. So
that just would not have hit the same.
Growing up working class, I thought a Canadian accent. So I tried it, and I just didn't connect to it. I just didn't do a very good job. So then I thought I would do something like Lothar of the Hill People.
Much have I seen and much have I done. Join us, will you not? For I am Lothar of the Hill People.
Because that was the character I did in D&D. And I thought, I'm not connecting to that either.
What was missing was my mom, who's from Liverpool, is a trained actress, used to read stories to me all the time when I was a kid and really acted them out. And all of my children's stories have English accents and British accents.
So then I said, listen, Scottish people are working class people. And the other thing is ogres have tempers, and so do Scottish people.
But by that time, Myers had already recorded most of the film without an accent.
This is my swamp. Let go, dog.
They went, we like it the way it is. And I said, oh, come on, just let me. And he said, it's going to cost millions.
Re-recording almost an entire dialogue for the third time wasn't exactly ideal for DreamWorks.
Just shows you how much work goes into these projects.
But Myers insisted.
I said, well, I'm not getting paid more to do this, So I said, let me just try one more time.
So once I shifted to Shrek being like a Scottish person who's lived in Toronto for 20 years. Then I could make that connection to that yummy feeling I had when I was a kid and your mom read your stories and the magic of that.
Drop it and leave it alone thing.
Steven Spielberg, he sent me a lovely letter, Steven Spielberg, saying, "You're so right. It's way better as Scottish. Thank you so much."
The dark and gritty feel during the Farley era was softening into a more comedic feel under Myers. But this new tone was extremely difficult to pull off in a CG animated film, given the technology was still in its infancy at the time.
I mean, there have been 100% animated, computer graphic generated films, but they haven't taken human-like characters and sustained a story for a whole feature length.
When they are working with this, they're thinking, okay, now I'm making this character look mad in a way that shows he's also embarrassed, and he's embarrassed because he's been caught lying. So that's a very particular, nuanced kind of mad.
Without the proper realism in emotive facial expressions and the characters, the film would never work.
We took what was the basis for the near-human facial animation system and took them 20 steps further. We have characters whose lips stick when they open their mouths. There's a little follow-through like normal people have. Every single muscle underneath the skin is moving with their speech and their facial expressions.
With a wonderful team of technical directors who really study anatomy, they figure out, where the facial muscles are, where the fat is on the face, and where the skin is loose.
I think we have about 500 controls to animate the face. When we animate the eyebrow, when we want certain shape, we might have 4 or 5 points here that we can just move one point at one time.
This is all commonplace today, but back then it was revolutionary.
And humans have done some crazy things. Like, that is just genius.
Away completely when I saw Shrek the first time.
I've never seen anything like it before.
To this day, when I watch Shrek, I'm still blown away. Not only by the stunning visuals, but just how sophisticated the adult comedy is. And guess who the target of its satire was? There are too many implicit shots at Disney to count. One of my favorites is Lord Farquaad.
Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
Which no one can prove is a parody of Michael Eisner, but come on. The stature, controlling, image-obsessed. I have to believe this was sweet revenge from Katzenberg. And it works. Comedy is taking the things from our lives that we know and love and turning them on their head. These are characters and tropes that so many of us grew up with. The gentle princess, true love's first kiss, the storybook opening,
True love's first kiss. Like that's ever gonna happen.
and the reason DreamWorks was able to pull this off without copyright suits from Disney, well, the characters they used are actually public domain. Disney had their versions of these fairy tale characters, but they actually originated from old European folklore, Grimm's fairy tales, and so on.
It's everybody from the Three Little Pigs to the Pied Piper and the Three Little Bears and Little Red Riding.
Just shows you how much culture there is in Europe. Like, people don't understand, like, they just see like some animated film and stuff, but it's all taken from stories from Europe.
Riding Hood, and on and on and on. It has a great fun time of kind of being a little bit irreverent to these wonderful stories that we've all grown up on.
Shrek takes all the elements of the classic fairy tale, throws them in a blender, and mixes them inside out and upside down.
And the most impactful element was the beautiful princess trope. Today, the message is everywhere. It's inner beauty that counts. But when Shrek did it, it was pretty revolutionary.
I'm supposed to be beautiful.
But you are beautiful.
At the time, DreamWorks was concerned that young girls especially would be put off by a princess who ends the film as an ugly ogre. Again, Katzenberg didn't want to do the safe route, the Disney way.
I wanted us to be something that would be its own set of values.
So he decided to leave the ending as is.
The way I've always thought about it is it's a math equation. If you take the right to fail out of the equation, you will not take risk. And if you don't take risk, you will not do things that are unique and original.
And the risk paid off.
I think the story itself just has a great
That's why you gotta take risks in life.
message of saying how important it is to sort of not judge people for the way that they look, but to see people for who they truly are.
The ending, to this day, still gets me every time.
But you are beautiful.
There's no question about the impact Shrek has had on people and on animation. All because of one man who dared to be different and maybe get a little revenge in the process. I'm Adam. This is ScreenPuff. If you liked this, check out this video on the screen.
Go give this guy a follow, ScreenPuff on YouTube. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed.